everybody, Matt here on the Vinyl Head UK channel, and we are back once again to have a trip down old memory lane and look at some download memories. So last week we looked at download 2004, the first download I ever went to. We're going to move on to the next year, 2005. I had a really good time talking about 04. It was nice to reminisce and remember old memories, some of the stuff that I can remember quite well, some of the stuff that I've forgotten a little bit. Had some messages from some guys who also been to 04, and it was nice to chat to them about old memories and, again, stuff that I couldn't remember. So it was a lot of fun. So I've been looking forward to doing the next episode as such of this download series and just, you know, take a trip down memory lane. So we're moving on to 2005. So this was the third download. As I say, I missed the very first one. It's the only one I've missed, so I haven't quite got the full set. I would have liked to, but we can't change that now. But 05. So again, I'm going with the same type of thing as did the other day. I've not researched set lists. I've not kind of done anything other than going to my own memory. I have got a list again of who played, just so, you know, not crossing wires. I don't want to confuse anyone and talk about a band that I thought played 2005 and actually played in 2008. So I have got a list of bands, just so I make sure the accuracy is there. But other than that, again, not looked at anything other than this list. So it was a 3-day event. It was the first time that Download had added an extra day. They put a day on the Friday. Now, although it was 3 days, I only did 2. And I'll tell you why. It was, I guess, a good reason. I had exams. Back then I was 17, I think. And I had to do exams on the Friday. I could have missed the exams. That would have been a bit more rock and roll. But I didn't. I was good. I did my exams. But I went on a Saturday and Sunday. We will talk about Friday. We'll look at who played, who probably I would have enjoyed seeing had I been there that day. But then we'll jump on to Saturday and Sunday. And we kind of go with the same thing as 2004. So I'll talk about who I saw. We will look a little bit at the rest of the lineup and analyse maybe where modern day Matt probably would have enjoyed going to see over 16, 17-year-old Matt. But yeah, we'll have a little look at Friday anyway. I don't want to exclude it. I know I wasn't there and this is about memories and sharing my experience of the festival, but we can look anyway and see what we had. So 2005. So headline wise, interesting one, this one. So Friday on the main stage, headlining was Feeder, British rock band Feeder. Now this day, I believe, if I remember correctly, was served as a indie day as such, an indie day. I think this was, from what I remember and what I've read since, this was kind of an experiment to see if the festival could be a little bit more commercial. And kind of look outside the typical Donington Monsters of Rock territory. And I think that's why Feeder ended up in this position. I don't know if Feeder ever realised what they were getting themselves in for as such. But I think from what I read after and what I heard and other people's comments, they kind of went down okay. Feeder had some more rockier, I wouldn't ever say heavy, but they had some rockier songs, which I'm sure they probably pulled out. I imagine there was a lot of Feeder fans there. They wouldn't have got booked as headliner if not. So yeah, an interesting one. I imagine these days, if Feeder were announced as the headliner, I think there'd be a bit more uproar, and that's not a dig at Feeder, but just maybe not quite the Download fit as a headliner, at least. I know Download's ventured into bringing all sorts of stuff in over the years. It's very much not just strictly a rock and metal festival these days. You know, they've brought in The Prodigy and Chase and Status and some country artists and Lethal Bizzle and stuff like that, you know. So it's diversified anyway. But yeah, this was seen as an indie day, which is interesting because there's a name on there that stands out as not very indie. But anyway, so we had Feeder on the Friday. Saturday was so they had the indie day and then they had the Ozfest day. This was marketed as an Ozfest day, and that of course was headlined by Black Sabbath. Who else other than Ozzy doing solo? Who else could headline an Ozfest day, right? And then System of a Down made their first headline appearance at Download and rounded off the main stage on the Sunday night. The second stage was named the Snickers stage, and Friday night saw Billy Idol headlining. The Saturday was In Flames, and the Sunday was Motorhead. The third stage this year was renamed the Napster stage. Don't go telling Lars Ulrich that. Napalm Death we had on the Friday, great band. Helmet on the Saturday, and then Therapy were on the Sunday. And then we had a fourth stage. I don't know as such if it was a stage. It's the Snickers Bowl stage. I vaguely remember it had something to do with skating. So I'm not entirely sure. If you remember, comment, help me out. But I imagine maybe some skating with bands playing as well. It did technically have headliners, I guess, as we look at it. So Tat, I don't know that name. It's not someone I'm familiar with. Was on the Friday. Ruben on the Saturday, and Electric Eel Shock were on the Sunday. So that was our headliners across the board, across the 3 days. Let's have that look at Friday and just see who was playing. I won't go through every band. I list who was main stage, but I won't go through every band on every stage. I think that's a bit much. But so the main stage, remember this is an indie day. So Queen Adrena opened. Wednesday 13, who is definitely not indie. Idiot Pilot, it's not a name I'm familiar with. JJ72, again, not overly familiar. The Others is another one I'm not familiar with. Then we have Biffy Clyro. Again, we spoke about how many times Biffy have actually played Download. It's a lot more than people realise. And then that name that is very much not indie. And I can only imagine they got lumped onto an indie day because of touring schedules and conflicts. I know that, I don't know if it did back then, but I know Download coincides with a couple of other festivals in Europe at the same time. So I know that Rock am Ring and Rock in Park falls the weekend before, and then Hellfest, I believe, is usually the weekend after. But there are other festivals that do coincide with Download. So, you know, scheduling conflicts is a big part. I know often that bands will play Donington and play at Download, and then sometimes make a quick exit to get to whichever country. I know it's hampered bands in the past with travel conflicts. We spoke in 2004's episode about Slayer, who were late arriving, I think because of traffic issues getting from where they were coming from. They were due to play on a main stage. That didn't happen. Damage Plan ended up doing that. Slayer on the second. So, yeah, conflicting issues. But yes, Megadeth. Not indie. Not indie at all. Great thrash band, for those that aren't familiar with Megadeth. Fantastic thrash band, one of the big four of thrash, alongside Metallica, Slayer and Anthrax. So Megadeth were very much the odd one out, I find, on that day, and very much not indie. But obviously the vast majority of guys going to download are rock and metal fans, so I imagine that Megadeth probably pulled a hell of a crowd on that Friday on that main stage, maybe more so than a lot of the bands. And then we had Dinosaur Jr. Again, I know of them, don't know much about them. Garbage, and then of course Feeder headlining. So yeah, there's some bands I don't really know on that day. I usually, leading up to download, I try and coincide it really with announcements. I will, if I'm not familiar with artist, which I'm not going to know everyone. I like to think my rock and metal knowledge is, you know, quite good, but I don't know everyone. And that's exciting because you could find a band that you've never heard of that you love. And I've definitely found bands through download, seeing them at download or whatnot, that I was like, God, these are great. I really like these. But yeah, so I try and go on Apple or Spotify and put in the bands that I haven't heard of, and maybe it will be someone that I want to check out. I might like them, check them out live, and they don't do it for me. I might be undecided listening on Spotify and see them live and think, God, they're so good. A great live band. So had I gone, I know Spotify and Apple Music weren't really doing anything in 2005, but I definitely would have tried to check out Idiot Pilot, JJ72 and the others, see if it was anything I liked. Across the board then, on the Friday, second stage, Flogging Molly opening. We have Fozzy, who have played several times. Lordi, sure many know Lordi, and they're famous for winning the Eurovision Song Contest. Lordi, I think, kind of had their 5 minutes of fame after that. I know that some of the European festivals they still play, they're quite big over in Europe. I think that's more of a mainland European draw than it is in the UK. Apocalyptica, who have played several times. My Chemical Romance, making their first appearance. So they had The Used and Billy Idol above them, so they were fairly high up that second stage. We all know that My Chemical Romance went on to big things. They actually went to headline download a few years after. So yeah, an interesting one. A bit of a mix again that day. As I say, the Napster stage, so the first stage, had Napalm Death headlining, Raging Speedhorn, Paradise Lost. A little bit heavier over on that third stage. Looking back, maybe other than Megadeth and Napalm Death, there's a hint there. Not really anything massively that would have drawn me. I'm not losing any sleep about missing that Friday back in 2005, but the best for me was yet to come. So Saturday, as I say, Ozfest Day, which was what it was marketed at, kind of trying to bring Ozfest back to Donington. Donington did hold an Ozfest back in the early 2001, 2002, around then. Ozfest came to download, didn't come to download, it came to Donington. It came to download in this one. So, memories of 2005. Once again, I went with my friend Andy, who I went with in 2004. I went to quite a few with Andy, so Andy will pop up in a lot of this. Maybe I can get Andy into one of these episodes at one point. That'd be quite fun. We can reminisce together. Trivium. Let's talk Trivium. Trivium opened up the main stage. And I think still to this day, if you look back at, there's a lot of top 10 lists of the best download moments or memorable or greatest download moments. This set by Trivium, I think, sits on most of those lists. Trivium had released Ascendancy. I remember Like Light to the Flies was doing a lot of airplay on the music channels. Pull Harder on the Strings of Martyr. Quite long song titles, I think I've got that right. That was also doing the rounds a little bit. So Trivium was starting to make themselves known. I believe they were booked on a lower stage, I think the 3rd stage. And their popularity was strengthening massively. And they got bumped up to open the main stage. Now, I've seen a lot of opening acts on the main stage, and it's a tough time for a band. It's 11 o'clock usually if you're on the Saturday, Sunday, a little bit later on the Friday. And you'll play to, for main stage, you will play to people who have got there super early, who want to be on the barrier for the headliner or sub-headliner. So the real dedicated hardcore fans. Day ticketers who have got there early and have pitched up to just sort of hang out at main stage. Or people who have just want to check out what's going on the main stage. So you can play to a few thousand, but maybe not anywhere near, obviously, what the bigger, later bands will be playing at. Andy and I got down fairly early, and we managed to get down, I would say, maybe 2, 3, 4 rows from the front. As I say, we got there as the doors opened, so we were one of the early ones in, and we got down, and, you know, we wanted to see Trivium, based off what we'd seen on the music channels and that. So, you know, and there was a fair amount of people heading down with us. So, you know, we thought the Trivium bug had definitely caught. And Trivium came on, and they played 25, 30 minutes. And I remember during one of the songs looking round behind me, and I was bowled over because there must have been 40, 50,000 people. I had no idea that many people were behind us. I knew the crowd was quite wild and the pit was quite wild down the front, but I did not know how many people were behind us. And it took me back a little bit because it was a big deal. And there was pits galore everywhere opening up. And it was amazing to see how many people had got there that early to see this band. And I think for Trivium, I'm sure if you ever spoke to those guys and listened to their interviews, that was quite a pivotal moment for them. And they've come back year after year. But that was very much a pivotal moment. And yeah, as I say, I think all those lists, top 10 lists and greatest moments of download, I think that will always feature on those because it really was a special moment. It's for an opening band on main to have that reaction. So it was a very cool moment. The Dwarfs were on after. And I think that was Nick Oliveri's band, who you will know from Queens of the Stone Age, the former bass player, liked to play naked, which I think he did for this set. We did what a lot of people did, kind of moved back. It was a powerful 25, 30 minutes with Trivium. I think a lot of people came away from that to go and chill out for a little bit. We watched the Dwarfs from a distance. Didn't do anything for me. You know, cool to see Nick Oliveri. I like Queens of the Stone Age. I think they did probably their best stuff with him. So it's cool to see him. Not really my thing, though. I mentioned in the 04 video that spent a lot of time down at main. This day, I think pretty much we stayed on main stage again. We didn't go to see anyone on the second stage, which, you know, when I get to this second stage, you know, this is definitely one of those moments where Matt would want to go, present day Matt would want to go back and speak to 17-year-old Matt and go, what are you doing? Second stage, look at that. We'll get on to that. Mad Capsule Markets followed. Again, we watched from a distance. Mad Capsule Markets were a Japanese band. I don't know if they're still going. I never really got into them. We watched them from a distance. Again, didn't really do anything for me. Not really my thing. But we watched them. We were still young. We still wanted to learn. We wanted to absorb as much of these bands as we could and learn and broaden our musical spectrum and our intake. But you can do that. It doesn't mean you're necessarily going to like the band. And again, didn't really do anything for me. A followed, British rock band. Nothing. Their song Nothing was a song that, again, was doing a hell of a rounds on the channels, music channels. It's a song everybody knew. I think it's a song that most people wanted to hear. They were there for that song. A did do a couple of other songs which people knew. It wasn't like a Europe moment with the final countdown where I saw, I'm going off on a tangent here. I saw I saw Europe play a festival. Wasn't Download, different festival. And very metal crowd. It was a metal festival. It's a very heavy metal crowd. And every time Europe started a song, the crowd booed. And then finally we got to final countdown and the place went crazy for that song. But A had some other songs that people knew, so it wasn't quite like Europe. I don't remember much about them. I don't really even remember them playing Nothing. I'm absolutely certain that they did. They could not play it with how big that song was at the time. But yeah, again, never massive. I like Nothing. I think it was a great track. It takes me back to my youth. It was a song that was always on, as I say. And it is a good song. But yeah, I don't remember too much about A. Nothing stood out to make me remember them, really. Bowling for Soup were on. Now, I'm not a big punk fan. I'm not a pop punk fan. There's tracks I like, but I don't mind hearing. If it comes on, I won't turn it over or skip it. I'll listen. But Bowling for Soup are a great band for the middle of the day at a festival when you just want to have a laugh, have a beer. You're not really, wanting to discover the next big thing in music. You just want to have fun. That's what festivals are about. Fun. Music, your friends, beer, fun, And Bowling for Soup are fun. They're incredibly fun. Whatever they play, it's fun. The stuff that they come out, the comedy aspect between them is fun. And it's always memorable. You go away with a smile on your face. You don't go away, you remember it. I've just said about A. I didn't really remember A. Nothing really stood out, but I remember Bowling for Soup. And they've come back and played several times since at Download. And despite not really being pop punk fan, I will always make an effort to see them if they're on the main stage, as long as they're not clashing with something that I really like, which, in hindsight, again, this second stage, I know where I would have been. If nothing else is on, you don't even have to stand. You can sit down on the grass a bit further back, watch Bowling for Soup and just have fun, have a good time. It makes you laugh, it's good. It's like Steel Panther do. I think Steel Panther are better musically and write some great tracks, but that sort of thing, you just have fun and have a laugh with it. Nothing too serious, which I think is good, especially with heavier festivals. It's something to break it up a little bit. You can only sort of for 3 days listen to so much extreme metal. Not that we have too much extreme metal at Download, but that sort of thing anyway. Alter Bridge were on. I'm a huge Alter Bridge fan, and this was the first ever time I got to see Alter Bridge. I remember them playing Metalingus, because that's a hell of a track off the first album. And then it sticks into my head to this day. They did a fantastic cover of Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. Which, ironically, Miles Kennedy, the vocalist, went and jammed out with Zeppelin when they were looking to come back to do some shows without Robert Plant, and Miles was the one approached, and you know, Miles did some rehearsals and jams with them. Miles also is fronting Slash, his solo stuff. Fantastic vocalist, just one of the best, an absolute one of my favourites. If you get chance to go and watch the Alter Bridge DVD Blu-ray of them at the Albert Hall with the, I think it's the Parallax Orchestra, go and do it. That is, even if you're not an Alter Bridge fan, go and watch that show. It's amazing. Miles hits notes that you didn't think any man could hit. It's an incredible thing. But it was the first time I saw them. This was going off the first album, hence why they dropped in a cover, a long cover, to kind of beef out their set list a little bit. But they were brilliant. And that first time I've seen them, I must have seen them now, 10, 12 times. And they just get better and better. And it was a fantastic first time seeing them. Definitely one of the highlights of the day for me, seeing those guys. And then Anthrax, one of the big four. We spoke about Megadeth. We actually had 3 of the big 4 play that weekend, one on each day. Megadeth Friday, Anthrax Saturday, and then Slayer on the Sunday. It was only Metallica missing. Anthrax, it was the original lineup. Dan Spitz, is it Dan Spitz? Maybe, the guitarist. So original lineup from back in the day, and they, again, a band that just doesn't disappoint. And that set, Download didn't have dust mats down or anything. Dust mats are pretty much what it says on the tin. They're mats that are put down to stop the dust. And there weren't any, and you could see easily where each circle pit was breaking out, because you just get like this huge dust cloud coming out of it, which was a little hard to breathe at times, you know, when you're surrounded by tens of thousands of people and then there's loads of dust. It's a bit hard to breathe at times. But Anthrax were really good. Caught in a mosh. You can't forget hearing songs like that. And it just wasn't mosh. The crowd was probably the best crowd of the day on the main. Was Anthrax. There's a lot of genuine metal guys from, you know, back in the 80s who wanted to see Anthrax, especially bringing back the original lineup. Obviously we had like John Bush for a while, so it was great to see Joey Belladonna coming back. I think it's Dan Spitz, his name, coming back as well. Obviously he's not with them now, but yeah, again, a fantastic band. I think an underrated band at times, are Anthrax. I think they've been relatively solid throughout their career. But yeah, dust clouds, dust everywhere. That's what I remember most on that. Just dust. Never really became a problem since, probably because of all the rain. So much rain at Download over the years. This was a lovely weekend weather-wise. 2004 was also a lovely weekend weather-wise. We didn't get rain at all. I didn't mention the weather on the first one, but yeah, it was gorgeous. You got burnt to a crisp. Same in 2005. But yeah, it was probably one of my favourite bands of the day, definitely. Top 3. Him were after. I've never been a Him fan. Not my thing. I've seen them a couple of times. I saw them at Wembley Stadium supporting Metallica. I just find them a bit boring. Sorry, gotta be honest. It's not massively my thing. I don't think we watched them. I think we went off and got food and whatnot. So I can't really comment on those, I'm afraid. Velvet Revolver. Here's a fun story. I'd never crowd surfed before. But I always wanted to. And I decided to crowd surf during Velvet Revolver. Now, the art of crowd surfing. It's better to do it in a more dense area when there's more people underneath to support you. I missed a bypass this because I decided I wanted to crowd surf near the back where not really anybody was crowd surfing. So people were a bit more sparse. I got boosted up by Andy and a couple of other guys. and I got pushed forward and I dropped on my head. And I learned a valuable lesson that day. Don't crowd surf near the back when there's less people. Velvet Revolver are very good though. I think this was the second time I'd seen them. I saw them at an arena show prior. And of course, it was a super group as such. We had Scott Wieland from Stone Temple Pilots on vocals. Unfortunately, no longer with us. And then we had Slash and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. Matt Sorum as well on drums. And then we had a guitarist who I can't remember the name of, also playing for him. But great set. I've watched this set not that long ago, a year or so ago maybe. I watched it back, this set, and I was amazed how good it was. It was 100 mile an hour from the get-go right through to the very end. It didn't let up. It was raw, it was edgy, it was pure rock and roll. We got some Guns N' Roses tracks, I believe, which is always a bonus, especially at that point where we didn't think we'd see Slash or Duff maybe back with Guns N' Roses. But it was a raw rock and roll set, and there was a big crowd for it. I think anytime you have Slash, you're going to draw. And obviously Stone Temple Pilots were very popular, very big band back in the day. And it was great, and it was a great sub onto our headliners, Black Sabbath. We got fairly good view with Sabbath. We got a good spot, dead centre, a little bit further back. And it was the original Sabbath lineup. It was the only time I ever saw the original four with Bill Ward. Every other time has been without Bill Ward, so it's just been the three of them, and then Ozzy's solo drummer. So yeah, it was a privilege to see the original four Black Sabbath. I'm a big Sabbath fan. I've already done a video on the self-titled debut, so I'm a big Sabbath fan. And it was just a dream to see. Ozzy was still fairly wild. He's tamed a little bit, I think, in recent years. The time since that I've seen Sabbath, it's not quite wild Ozzy. He has his moments, but this was back still wild Ozzy. Before he mellowed a little. And it was just, the crowd was huge. They had a ridiculous amount of crowd surfers. And, I mean, The Wizard, NIB, War Pigs, Paranoid. We had a guy with us. Andy actually reminded me of this story a while back. We had a guy, and I must have blocked it out of my memory. But we had a guy, and Paranoid was the main one. And he obviously didn't know the words, but all you could hear behind us was a little bit off-putting. The first time I got to hear this classic Sabbath song, and you've got this guy behind doing that. But, you know, it was a hell of a show. It wasn't anything, you know, you see bands, Rammstein, spring to mind, or Kiss, who have these fantastic stage shows. Sabbath was very simple. It was just four guys and their instruments. You know, there was nothing more to it than that. And they just let the music do it. Rage Against the Machine a few years later played, and it was very much like that. There was nothing to it, just them playing. And just let the music talk. And that's what Sabbath did. There was no frills or spills to the show as such. It was just pure, brilliant music. And that satisfied everybody. No one went away disappointed because they didn't get pyro or didn't get whatever. The stuff that you see in other bands' shows, especially headline shows. And it was just a great time. And, you know, Ozzy sort of jittered around the stage, but that's the charm of him these days. It was just... And, you know, I said on that Sabbath video, for me, the greatest rhythm section ever. Bill Ward and Geezer Butler, there they were, playing together. And you got to hear the stuff that you always hear on record live. And it was just amazing. And the highlight of a weekend for me, especially as I say, because that was the only time seeing Bill Ward. Looking back on it, how lucky we were to see. And again, I don't think a single person went away disappointed at all. So Black Sabbath. The second stage, I keep hinting at it, how good it was. Let's go through. I won't go through everyone. I'll go through the top 6 or 7. Every Time I Die, Unearth, Meshuggah, Bullet for My Valentine, Lamb of God, Chimera, In Flames. Wow. What a absolute KO of a few hours that would be. Every Time I Die, I love. You cannot fault an Every Time I Die live show. Just madness. Absolutely amazing. The energy of them is fantastic. Unearth would have carried it on. Meshuggah. Who doesn't love Meshuggah? Heavy. Amazing time signatures. Just raw. Bullet. I guess Bullet were up and coming still at that point. They jumped from midway through 3rd stage the year prior to a fairly high slot on 2nd. Lamb of God in a small tent, smaller stage, would have been intense. I guess at that point we would have seen maybe Ashes of Awake. They probably were on at that point. That just would have been intense. Chimera fairly high. Chimera kind of dropped off a little bit. But again, just would have followed that intensity. And then In Flames. In Flames, I think, have not the band they once were. But I think at that point they still would have been a pretty mighty force at that point. So I think that definitely encapsulated the Ozfest side. If you ever see any of the Ozfest, the US lineups, that was, you know, not a million miles off what the tour would actually be like. But yeah, I mean, it, you know, I would have missed, say, Alter Bridge and Anthrax, but God, it would have made up just being through all of those. That would have been a hell of a Saturday. Sunday would have been a slog after that. Nothing much to report on the 3rd stage for me. Breed 77 were there. We talked about them opening up. Main stage 2004. The Answer, good band that have played Download several times as well. I wouldn't have minded seeing them. But other than that, really not a lot for me to say on there. Let's jump on to Sunday. Deviate. Deviate, if I remember rightly, was some young guys. They're American maybe. They were literally 14, 15, 16, something like that. Very young. Don't remember anything about them though. Society 1, I remember this. Society 1 had a singer. Before the set started, they hooked him. You heard me right there. They hooked him through the skin on his shoulders. So I think it was like 4, 1 on each shoulder and then more towards the neck. These metal hooks went through his skin. They lifted him up, about halfway up between the floor and the roof of the stage. And he swung on these metal hooks for the entirety of the set. 30, 35 minutes this must have been, just swinging. There was someone swinging him, getting his legs swinging him. I don't know what was going on. It was crazy to see. I just don't know what else to say. A guy swinging on metal hooks from his skin. The music was not amazing. Maybe that was tailored to see a guy swinging to kind of stop people focusing on the music, maybe. It was definitely unique, though. And it stuck in my head, so it did something, you know. It's wedged in my brain, so they obviously did something that day to be remembered. I don't know, just odd, very odd. Mudvayne, a band I like. I don't really remember anything about the set though. Luckily, Mudvayne have just reformed, so hopefully Download their comeback and we'll have something to remember and buy. But I don't remember much about them. Not even Dig or anything like that. Shame, really. I'm pretty sure we did see them. Papa Roach. What would they have been on back then? Infest came out early 2000s. They must have been on the next album at this point. I a lot of Papa Roach's sets over the years blend into one, and that's Jacoby with a lot of energy and usually coming down towards the crowd or doing something crazy like that. I don't remember much about this set, if I'm honest. Andy does more than I do, I think, but yeah, not remembering too much at this point on that. And then Killswitch Engage, back when Howard was with them. I remember a fair bit about this. I remember when Darkness Falls, Rose of Sharon, it all kicked off a lot, like decent pits. I preferred Howard era Killswitch. I like Jesse Leach, but I preferred Howard. And Adam D is enough to make you laugh as well. We talked about Bowling the Suit making you laugh. Adam D does make you laugh. But a good band as well. As a band I've seen a lot over the years. This might have been... I'm pretty sure I would have seen them before Download this year. Probably an Academy show or something like that. In fact, yes, the first time I think I saw them, they had Bring Me the Horizon supporting. And then we bumped into Bring Me the Horizon at McDonald's in Birmingham outside the old Academy. And back when they weren't really anything. Obviously, they're massive now, but... Killswitch. Now, we got brave. We ventured away from the main stage for the first time. We went and saw a band that wasn't on the main stage for the first time in our Download lives, our Download history. And we went across to the second stage and we saw Mastodon. Mastodon is a band who I love. I love a lot of bands. You've probably gathered that by now. But Leviathan came out in 2004 or 2005. I'm a drummer, and hearing Brandela play on that album, all I wanted to do was play along to the album. I wasn't anywhere, or will never ever be, as good as that drummer, but I would play along to it. I might not be as technical as him, but I would play along, and it would... Remember I talked about my big CD player. I talked about it in the 2004 episode. Your big CD player, one disc, shove it in your pocket and hope for the best. Leviathan lived in it. And then when I got an iPod, Leviathan was one of the first ones onto my iPod, and I would just listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. And I was at sixth form at the time at school, and anybody that would listen, I would talk about Leviathan. It's still one of my favourite albums to this day. I don't think Mastodon have really topped it. I know they've produced some incredible albums, but they never topped it, I don't think. For me, personally, anyway. But we went and saw them in the second stage. I could not miss this opportunity to go and see them. So off we went. This was back where you had the main stage and then you had the second stage sit a little bit around. So I think it was a one-way. And you would have to go behind main, over to the big tent, because this was back when it was a big marquee tent, and then come back round the other way back to main. They played March of the Fire Ants off Remission, which I love. Blood and Thunder, obviously, at that point was the main song that everybody would know from Leviathan. And I remember being vaguely surprised that there wasn't more people in the tent than there were. It was busy, don't get me wrong. It was a pretty relatively solid lineup for the rest of the day in that tent. But I was surprised there wasn't as many people there as I expected. Disappointed because of how much I love that band and how much I love that album. And I kind of just wanted everybody on the site to be there to experience that with me. But less people meant we got a better space in the tent. Those tents can be quite tricky if you don't get there at a decent time and it's a band that everybody else wants to see. Those tents can be quite hard to get in. Recent examples for me, Gojira a couple of years ago. The rain didn't help that because everyone piled in. Ginger, 2019, and the fourth stage was very hard work to get into there because everybody wanted to pile in to see Ginger. So yeah, it got a little tricky, but it meant we could get in and we got a good spot for Mastodon and just got to watch Brandela and marvel in all of the Mastodon, Leviathan, Remission, glory. And they didn't disappoint. We only stayed there for Mastodon before going back to main. So we didn't see anybody else after. So we went back to main and we caught the third song or so of Nightwish, which funnily enough turned out to be probably the last song of Nightwish. Nightwish, I think, had travel issues. They only managed to do like a 4-song set. This was back when Tarja was in the band, which I don't mind Nightwish. I preferred them since Tarja. A bit too operatic for me. But yeah, we caught the the third song. We're like, oh, cool, we'll watch them. Oh, okay, they're done. And yeah, travel issues, I guess. But at least they got to play. I mean, it's crazy to come all the way to a country to do like 3 or 4 songs, but sometimes that can't be helped. They're okay. But we wanted a good spot because it was a triple bill that was very pleasing for us. We had Slayer, and then we had Slipknot, and then we had System of a Down. All the S's. And interestingly enough, Slayer and Slipknot both played the year before, and they've been brought back the following year, both touring on the same record. I don't know for Slayer if it was because of the mishap as such the prior year, where they were put down onto second because of the travel issues. I don't know if they were welcomed back and say, here you go, it's your main stage slot you were promised. And Slipknot was still rolling off Subliminal Verses. They were still on that tour. Both bands were brilliant. In your face, great sets. I remember Angel of Death for Slayer. It's worth Angel of Death just being a drummer, just to hear that double bass part where it's nothing but the kick drum of Dave Lombardo. We were just to the left. Normally, at that point, we used to watch a lot of stuff on the right, but I think because we double back round, we were on the left. We had a lovely view looking across. We weren't too much into the pits. We were out just a little bit, and we got a lovely view looking across, sort of diagonally at Slayer, a little bit further back. I remember Slayer, Slipknot, and System very well. The Slipknot set wasn't too dissimilar to the year prior, from memory. And yeah, great shows. System headlined. Unfortunately for me, I've seen System 3 times, I think, at Download, and I've never come away thinking that was a great System set. And I felt that the first time I saw them, definitely. I just didn't think they were... I wanted raw 2001 era System of a Down, and I didn't feel like I got that. I remember just as Aerials started, it was a nice segue because a plane came over the top of us, and Darren, the guitarist, said about the plane coming over, and it was a funny little segue into Aerials. But I just didn't find that they quite fired on what I was wanting System of a Down to be like. There are certain bands who I had wished to see in a specific era. I would have loved to have seen Metallica in 1988 era Metallica and 89 era Metallica. I would have loved to have seen System of a Down in 2001 era System of a Down. There's other bands I could mention, you know. And I just felt a little bit flat. I don't know if that's because we had Mastodon and then Slayer and then Slipknot, that 1, 2, 3. And then System seemed a bit flatter maybe, or I don't know. I'm sure there's probably guys out there who watched System of a Down and thought absolutely brilliant, best time I've seen them, but I don't know. And I've felt like that on the later times I've seen System of a Down headline at Download. They were scheduled for 2020. They were, I think, scheduled for 2021. I wasn't, if I'm honest, massively disappointed to see that they weren't doing 22. I'd love to see a show where I come away from System going, do you know what, that was the one I've been waiting for, but it hasn't happened yet, and I was a little bit disappointed coming away from System, which puts me on to, you know, I mentioned I wanted to be on that second stage on Saturday. I kind of wish I'd gone for Motorhead. Again, I'm going to repeat this sentence a lot, but I am a huge fan of this band. I was a die-hard Motorhead fan. One of my favourite times of the year, it was almost a guarantee, like Christmas is guaranteed every year. A Motorhead UK November tour was guaranteed every year. They would tour the UK every November, Initially, I would go with friends and see Motorhead. And then that changed on to going every year with my dad. And great memories going with my dad. We love going every year. My dad always recalls stories of whenever he saw Motorhead, he seemed to have a big important meeting the next day. And he would go in and his ears would just be ringing. Because, of course, Motorhead was so loud. But every November we'd go and see him. Saw him at the Birmingham Academy. We saw him at the Wolverhampton Civic. We saw him at the De Montfort Hall in Leicester one year, which was god-awful. I hated being at that venue. I couldn't do the Wolverhampton show for some reason. So we did Leicester. And they had Anthrax supporting, which was already a winner. And it was just a weird feeling, the whole gig. You couldn't have alcohol in there, which obviously, you know, Motorhead and beer go hand in hand, really. Couldn't take it in. It was very just a weird atmosphere. So, yes, I saw Motorhead many, many times. And when this got announced, I went with System because it was main stage. It was the final day. I felt like I needed to be on the main stage, see this big band of System. And in hindsight, maybe made the wrong choice. But I wasn't to know back then. I wasn't to know we were going to get this System set that I wasn't overly impressed with. So, you know, didn't get to see Motorhead that year. I think I made sure I saw Motorhead every other year at Download. But you live and learn. You don't always get it right. You know, there's so much choice at festivals. You just don't know. So that was that. That's who we saw. Let's look at who else we had. Relatively metal day on the Sunday. As I Lay Dying, Caliban, Shadows Fall. We had Lacuna Coil. Yeah. Oh, I've missed someone. I have missed somebody. Just seeing his name. Let's rewind. That trip to the second stage wasn't my first trip away from the main stage. I missed somebody. That was my second trip away from the main stage. The Napster stage, the third stage. On the Sunday, opening up was Henry Rollins. And he did a spoken word show. Henry Rollins, obviously, is a very famous... he does all sorts these days. But he was with Black Flag. It's where a lot of people know him from. But he's gone on to do podcasts. And he's an author. And many other things. And he does spoken word and comedy. If you haven't checked out Henry Rollins, go and do it. He's a brilliant, brilliant storyteller. He tells fantastic stories about Black Sabbath. He tells fantastic stories about Lemmy and Motorhead. About the old punk scene. And he's also, here's a segue onto my other videos. He is a die-hard record collector. He is vinyl through and through. Massively through and through on vinyl. His vinyl collection is ridiculous. And there is a fantastic video of him doing an unboxing for the box set of Ace of Spades by Motorhead. Anyway, we went and saw Henry Rollins. He was the first artist on the Napster stage for third stage. We went and saw him and he was brilliant. He had you howling with laughter. And he also is a great storyteller, as I say. My favourite storyteller in metal is Scott Ian from Anthrax. I think Scott Ian tells incredible stories, the way he tells them as well. But Henry Rollins is up there, and I've watched many Henry Rollins vinyl videos on YouTube. It's helped me learn more about vinyl, especially when I was getting into this world of vinyl and kind of trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing. Henry Rollins was very helpful with his videos. So we went and saw him. So he was actually my first trip away from the main stage. And then my first band away from the main stage was Mastodon. So yeah, he was brilliant. He really good. The rest of the day, nothing really I probably would have liked to have seen. 3 Inches of Blood is a great band. I don't think they're going anymore, but they were playing. Maybe would have liked to have seen them. Nothing really else takes my fancy. I'm sure there's stuff out there for others to have seen, but nothing much for me. So all in all, Download 2005 was a good one. I don't quite remember as much as I did for 2004 from it. It was many years ago now. I think 2004 I remembered more because it was my first one and I wanted to take everything in. But 2005 was a good one. It was quite a strong lineup. You know, got to see many bands for the first time that I hadn't seen before. You know, Sabbath being one of them. And yeah, it was a good festival. And I hope you've enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. I will be back with 2006 next week. Remember, hit subscribe if you like what you're seeing. There's plenty of other videos on vinyl. That's my main thing that I talk about on this channel, is my vinyl collection and sharing those vinyl with you guys and just talking about what I have. So yes, subscribe if you like what you see. Hit the thumbs up. Hit that bell so you know when I am posting my videos. I'll be back with more vinyl content throughout the week. And then I will see you back same time next week, where we will look back on 2006, which again, great strong year. Really good year 2006. But until then, I will see you soon. You look after yourselves and I'll catch you later.